In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. This is the mantra of Warhammer 40,000. Now, here on Geekopolis, I want to talk about that because I'm relatively new to Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, but I have really enjoyed what I have read and heard so far. So, I wanted to kind of dip my toes into the old pool here of this and put my 2 cents in. So I'll give an overview of just the bare minimum basics for anybody who doesn't know, and I feel like that'll be a good starting point. So, Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer 40k is a tabletop miniature war game created by Games Workshop. Now, the mechanics of it, I've never played a tabletop game. I don't have any miniatures, but that's not really what I'm going to discuss. I just want to make sure anybody watching that doesn't know knows what it is in, reality. Now, I'll discuss the lore and the background behind it. Generally, this is going to be as vague as you can get, because the Warhammer 40k universe is one of the most expansive universes that I have ever encountered. It is vast. So, I'll be brief. And again, I'm still relatively new, so if there's anything that I get wrong or that I should elaborate more on, feel free to tell me. So, in modern 40k, there is obviously different factions fighting for control of the galaxy. The main force, the largest force in the galaxy, is the Imperium of Man, led by the great God Emperor, who resides on Holy Terra, Old Earth. The Imperium has over 1 million planets in its control, and is broken up into different segmentums. These patrol different sections of the galaxy, and most of the planets, to some degree, have their own sovereignty, but are collectively under the banner of the Imperium. The poster child for the Imperium is the Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, and their various chapters. They are the augmented human soldiers, or they're not humans anymore, really. They are, but they're just heavily modified. The other main force is the Astro Militarum, the Imperial Guard. They are the foot soldiers and the main bulk of the Imperial forces. They are the largest faction, I should say, in the galaxy. However, they face innumerable threats from the Xenos races, which I will get into now. One such race is the Orcs, at first glance, primitive species, however, have an incredible ability to manufacture high levels of technology, even spacecraft, but yet seem to be fundamentally ignorant in pretty much everything besides combat. That's part of their designs, being the descendants of a group created by the Old Ones. I will get into that at some later point. The most famous of the orcs would probably be Gazgul Maz Urukraka, the Beast, and his legendary assaults on the planet of Armageddon, which I may get into later, probably, maybe, who knows. Then we have the Eldar, and by extension the Dark Eldar. They're essentially just space elves. And their whole deal is, a lot of them live on craft worlds. Massive, almost, some like, what was the size of them? Like, I believe it was like continent to moon size ships, easily, that these Eldar live on. And then they have their craft worlds. Maiden worlds. Sorry about that. They're maiden worlds. These are very important to the Eldar, because when they had a vast empire, they had many worlds. Then, due to their own, let's say, debauchery, their worlds were eaten by the chaos god Slaanesh, which now has a very particular appetite for Eldar souls. So they protect their worlds with everything they have, because they keep their very souls inside of those worlds, so they do not get eaten by Slaanesh when they die. Then we have Chaos. Since I just mentioned Slaanesh, let's go into Chaos. Chaos is complicated. There is the Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Legions, and then there's the Chaos Gods. Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh. Each of these represent a different form of emotion, and they feed off of that emotion. For instance, Khorne, the blood god, feeds off of murder and rage and blood. That's what gets him more powerful. And the more powerful that emotion is, the more powerful he becomes. And all of these gods exist in the Immaterium, a mirror, a twisted, mirrored version of our own physical reality. You have Tzeentch, who is the bringer, who is the change. You know, that's what he represents. He brings change and schemes and innovations. And the more you create plots, and the more treachery and strategy and change that is brought into the world, the more powerful he becomes. Or I should say it. They don't really have genders. Nurgle, the god of death, decay, sickness, plague. He feeds and becomes stronger upon sickness and illness and disease that ravages through entire planets. And the more that is spread throughout the universe, or, well, universe, galaxy, I meant to say, but there could be things outside the galaxy. That's, I believe, where the Tyranids come from. I'm getting to them in a minute. But he feeds on that. And as I mentioned earlier, Slaanesh, he is the god of excess, of pleasure, and anything that you can enjoy will feed him if you do it too much. Such as if you enjoy intercourse, per se, and you do it normally, you know, with your person that you're in a relationship with, or your one-night stand, or whatever, and then it gets more aggressive. You have to cut them, or then you have to asphyxiate them while doing your business. And that's what feeds Slaanesh. Just imagine how much of that debauchery would have to be done by the Eldar to literally manifest this creature, and you'll get an idea of why the Eldar are not the best of races, despite their elegant appearance and pretty sophisticated technology, far greater than that of most of the Imperium has. Although most of the Imperium's technology was lost back in the after the Dark Age of technology. And moving on to the final main race that I'll talk about. There's two others that I'll briefly mention. The Tyranids. The Tyranids are a hive-like race. They subsist exclusively on the biomass of entire planets and systems, star systems. They are essentially just giant insects that eat everything in their path. And when I say everything, I mean they literally strip a planet devoid of not just life, like, animals or plants, but the water, minerals that can be useful to them, and the very atmosphere itself via their capillary towers. Now, the thing with the Tyranids, they are called the Great Devourers, so that pretty much tells you what you need to know. Why that they are doing what they're doing could be boiled down to simple instinct. Although, it could have something to do with the fact the Emperor, sitting upon the golden throne, that amount of psychic energy that is released from him, being the guiding light of the Imperium, could be drawing the Tyranids near, giving their particular effects on the warp, which I'll talk about later. That is directly, or the immaterium, They're a very interesting race, and I'll discuss them more at a later date. Again, I'm just being very brief with these, so I'll get into these individually and more in-depth later, but I'm really just trying to be general, and I know I'm kind of stumbling a bit, but I don't want to say too much, because then I'll go on a tangent. Now, the last two I'll mention, I'll be a little more brief. The Necron and the Tau. The Necron are interesting. The reason I didn't consider them more so in a main faction is because I haven't seen as much of them as the others that I've mentioned. But I'll just mention what I do know. They're a very ancient race. They competed in the War in the Heavens with the Old Ones, and ended up leading to the defeat of the Old Ones with their Catan masters. Which then they kind of said, screw this, and they overthrew the Catan and made them into their slaves. They also did battle with the Eldar, back when the Eldar was still young, and not a, broken race. When they were more focused on actual tasks that needed to be accomplished, and not just, once you conquer the galaxy, you must conquer boredom, I guess. And that's a bit problematic when stagnation sets in, because the thing with the Eldar, after they've defeated the Necrons tend to go into a deep sleep in their pyramids. And the Eldar decided that since we're basically immortal, and the Necrons are now defeated, the reason that they were created, the Eldar were created by the Old Ones, they had nothing else to do, which led to their, there's giant, massive orgies, which caused the birth of Slaanesh. And I'm talking on a galactic scale, by the way. So, anyways, and finally the Tau. This I know the least about, but from what I can gather, they're space communists. And they believe in doing everything for the greater good. Now, I get what they're saying with the Tau, but they're not... They're the closest thing to a good guy in Warhammer 40k, but they're still not good. Like, They embrace technology. They're not overly strict on things. They just believe in the greater good, and don't particularly care too much about individualism. So if you're not part of the greater good, then get out of the way, because you're not useful. Now, if you're thinking, well, wouldn't the Imperium be a good guy? You know, they're the humans. They're trying to fight off against the Xenos. Well, yes and no, depending on your opinion. If your opinion is human survival at all costs, then yes, the Imperium would be the good guys. But they're not good. They will happily slaughter their own civilians if it means defeating an Orc Wog or a Tyranid Hive Fleet. They really don't care about civilian casualties, and your life as an individual means nothing. You are a single person in a trillions, and there were literally multi-trillions of people. I mean, millions of planets with tens of billions of people on them. So, you mean nothing. So if you happen to be on a world, and that world is infected with, say, chaos, and the Imperium decides to say, alright, this world's just not savable, they'll commit exterminatus and destroy the planet to varying degrees of the chaos infestation there. If it's a minor infestation, but they just can't seem to get rid of it, then they'll do an exterminatus with a virus bomb and kill the surface, and eventually kill all life on the planet and restart. If it's embedded in the planet itself, then they will literally just destroy the entire planet, like something out of Star Wars with the Death Star. So, yeah, I wouldn't consider them the good guys either. But that is an overview of them. Sorry if I kind of butchered that a bit. I didn't make a script for this because I said, screw it. This is just going to be an overview. I'm not getting into many actual details anyways. And I'm going to be doing these in individual parts anyways. So, whatever. Anyways, that is my little introduction to Warhammer 40k, and I will be discussing them more at length later. Please give me any suggestions. If I left anything that is tremendously important out, I will either get to it in a different video, but mentioning it will help me. So, please let me know, and with that being said, like, comment, and subscribe, and if you enjoyed, please share it. Geekopolis, out.